Okay, the time is now 6:15, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone for coming out tonight. Tonight's meeting is a informational workshop for the Gahanna City Planning Commission. Just like to remind everyone that this is an informational workshop to disseminate information, ask questions. Nothing's going to be decided here tonight. So with those ground rules, the first item, the only item, is discussing on sheets. And for that, I'm going to start with Mr. Blackford, our Director of Planning, for a quick presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No presentation. What I have up here is the applicant's information. And before they come up here and talk to you about the project, just a little background of how we got here tonight. So the fine folks representing Sheets came and approached us. Us being the Department of Planning in late October, we had a meeting, sat down. It was a meeting like most of our meetings where we go over some high-level code requirements, process, applications, timelines, things of that nature. During that discussion, we talked about the zoning of the property. It's community commercial. Gas stations are a conditional use, and since it's conditional use, not a permitted use, staff weighed in and we gave our preliminary input on some of the concerns that we had with the request. One of them was the land use plan and how the land use plan looks to develop this particular corridor with more continuation of the creekside uses and development patterns. We also talked about the proposed code changes. They are proposed. They're not adopted, but what this area would be zoned, gas stations would be a prohibited use and not a permitted or a conditional use. So we did share that with the applicant, make sure that they were aware. They submitted applications after that meeting, which they're entitled to, and then they're vested to the code that's in place at that particular time. We also shared some feedback on some design elements that we thought might make the project a little bit more fit in with the look there, and one of it was as you see on your screen there, they have the buildings and the gas pumps, was to orient those more perpendicular with Granville rather than parallel with Granville, just to kind of soften that input. Those were those preliminary discussions back in October. But staff can say whatever we want, and at the end of the day, when it's a conditional use, staff gives a recommendation. We are not the decision makers. So we talk about when maybe staff's not going to support something, that perhaps having the workshop with Planning Commission, since you all are the group that would approve or deny the request, would be beneficial to the applicant so they can move forward accordingly based on your feedback. So again, just a brief overview of why we're here tonight. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to recognize the applicant. A couple ground rules when you come up to speak. If you could speak directly into the microphone, and if you would please give your name and address and your association with the project, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name's Mike Shannon. I'm an attorney with Underhill and Hodge, 8000 Walton Parkway, New Albany. I'm here on behalf of the Skilkin Company and Sheets once again. I was not involved in the initial iteration of the previous Sheets project, but I was involved in a couple appeals related to that. So I am mindful that you are very familiar with the Sheets product, so to speak, the Sheets operation. I don't want to skimp on the presentation, but I don't have to go into the granular details about the fact that we feel that Sheets is primarily a restaurant. The vast majority of the revenue that's generated at that store does not come from the gasoline. It comes from the restaurant and the sale of other sundry items that this retailer that's had such a significant impact in Central Ohio here the last couple years has on display. We think that, and this may not mean much, but we think we have found a better site than the one previously submitted to you for a number of reasons. First of all, this is not vacant land that's waiting to be developed that, sitting next to an educational facility like the previous site. This site is clearly more urban in nature. I'm a old-time Whitehall resident, but when I think of this area, I do think of kind of downtown Gahanna. I'm obviously aware of the Creekside project and have another application dealing with the property over there. But I think this site checks an awful lot of the boxes in terms of what I heard last time in terms of the other site. It was offered as to what would be a more appropriate site, and we think we've spent an awful lot of time, money, and effort to identify such a site. Clearly, staff indicated the base zoning for community commercial has this as a conditional use. I'm not going to insult your intelligence and go through the same criteria that we proffered in the appeal arena, but they are pretty straightforward, and I could just briefly reference them because that's what we are here for in the long term, is to get an approval of a conditional use and one very minor variance. But the standard of review for the conditional use, your code uses the word shall, that approval shall be given if the use meets the development standards in the code. We think we will do that with one minor exception, that the development is in accord with the appropriate plans for the area. That's where we could be splitting hairs and saying that the current plan, the current code contemplates such a use. But as Michael explained, your master planning document looking at future goals and objectives, I think calls for a mix of uses here, maybe residential office and or some other type of retail. But certainly we check the box for the retail component. We don't think the development will have undesirable effects on the surrounding areas. And we also think that it's keeping in use with the existing land character. The reality is the subject site's a bar. Directly across the street is a car wash, which is obviously an automotive-related use. We think that the infusion of this type of development could be the catalyst for development of the parcels to our east and to our west. It's my understanding it's the same owner of all of these three parcels, which it's in our application. Collectively, I think it's about about 3.9 acres. Our subject site is about 1.25, right in the middle, and there is the remainder of the tract is on either side of the building. We think the access is natural from a traffic perspective. Obviously, with the street light there, it's conducive to providing easy access. We do think that for Gahanna residents that are going to venture down and get on 670/270 down Granville, that it makes sense to have a gas station of this quality. And again, you hear it over and over again, but it's not really doing it justice to call it just a gas station. I heard a previous lawyer 20-some years ago talk about the new Sunoco's that actually had food in them, and he called them economy fuel boutiques. So I wouldn't go that far, but I do think it's an interesting product. There are 35 stores that have been constructed and approved in the Central Ohio and Dayton area in just 2.5 years. And there are another 8 to 10 under construction within Franklin County. We want to be part of your community. Arguably, we stubbed our toe last time, but we want to try to get it right this time. I can respond to specific questions. I do want to point out the one minor variance that we've been able to identify would be at the far northern part of the tract where the dumpster is kind of outlined in white. There typically is a 10-foot setback requirement, and we wanted to push that back north as far as possible to accommodate the brick enclosure that kind of replicates our architecture. Again, we tried to be sensitive in terms of landscaping. Again, mindful that there is a park to the north. The way I see it, and I could be wrong, but this looks like the primary access to that park. There may be other ways to get to it that I'm just not familiar with, but when I did my drive-by and walked around a little out there, it looked like it was a very important access. So we have a development team here of civil engineers, traffic engineers, and representatives of Sheets. Also here is DW Rout, who is with the Skilkin organization, and he can introduce the respective consultants who would be in a position to answer specific questions that I'm not able to address. So the bottom line is it's a conditional use application. We'd like to try to move forward with it, and we think that the variance is de minimis. Just one comment. I wasn't in the meeting with Mr. Blackford, but he talked about the fuel canopies being perpendicular as opposed to parallel. Did I get that right, Michael? We thought that, at least the word I got was the only way to do that would be to pull the building up to the front. Maybe I'm making an illogical jump, but we don't think that's the most efficient use to the site. I mean, we'd be willing to discuss it further, but typically the expectation of people fueling their vehicles is that they would be visible from a public right-of-way for reasons that are fairly obvious. So we think that's something that, and again, I apologize if I didn't get the interpretation correct, but we think the building sitting back where it is as proposed is much more functional. And again, having those fuel dispensaries visible from a public right-of-way is a standard in the industry, not just with Sheetz. So having said all that, I can answer questions now or let DW introduce the rest of the team at the pleasure of the chair.
Sure, go ahead with your team.
Thank you. Sure.
Good evening. First of all, thank you very much for your time. Sorry, Mike.
Sorry.
My name is DW Rout. I'm the project manager for this with Skilkin Gold. So I'm going to, our team, we have Braden Putnam from V3, Drew Laurent from Carpenter Marty, Kareem Amir, he's also with Skilkin Gold, and then Mike Casal from Sheetz. So I was not involved in the original project last time, so I am new to Gahanna, so it is my honor to be here. I'm excited to be here. And I know you're all very familiar with Sheetz, but I will remind you that it's a family-run business. It was started in 1952, and it is still a family-run business. Skilkin Gold, we are also a family-run business. And so the partnership was a very natural partnership, and we take it very seriously when we present these projects. So with that being said, Sheetz in general and Skilkin Gold, our projects are very important to us, and the quality is very important to us. So when we present, we pick these sites very intentionally, and we pick Gahanna because we value the community. We want to enhance the community. That's the main goal. We've also looked at this site with that park in mind as a connective space to bridge that gap from the street to the park. We have that in mind with all of our development here. In terms of the site layout, there are some engineering difficulties with changing the site any different than it is currently laid out. I will let V3 answer any of the engineering technical questions, because that is not my expertise. And then any traffic concerns, we have Drew here with us from Carpenter Marty. The traffic studies are already underway, so, and we had an initial meeting with traffic already. They did not seem to have too many, they really weren't too concerned overall. There's an existing light there, which honestly helps that immensely. The backup to the south is not anticipated because people will be accessing it from Granville. So that wasn't a concern. So traffic seemed pretty positive on that one. And then like Michael Blackford said, we met with planning. Planning staff has been wonderful in helping us navigate the different application process, and we've turned in all of our applications so far to make sure that we're, you know, we're secure in the current zoning and we can move forward as is as a conditional use. So with that, I will turn it over to questions, and if there are any engineering or traffic questions. Our main goal tonight, by the way, is we just want to get feedback from you guys We want to make sure we alleviate any concerns, and then that way we can address those concerns and then move forward appropriately. So thank you guys very much for your time, by the way. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to begin with questions from the Planning Commission. Start here to my left, Mr. Hicks.
Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions. I will have some feedback to share at a later time.
Mr. Wester?
I'll give feedback later.
Mr. Shabaka?
Questions. Landscaping along Granville, was that an agreement with the city, with the 6 2-inch caliber trees? Or is that just,
These are just proposed right now. The landscaping is flexible with however Gahanna sees fit.
because it looks nice and plush, but you're covering your image, so if we would just have half that tree. Mr. Blackford, is there a number associated with that street? Is there one every 50 feet, one every 100 feet, or is that? the discretion?
I don't think we've completed the first round of reviews on that project. When it's in the street, if we're talking about the 6 along Granville Street that are shown in the right-of-way, that's usually our Parks Department would have street planting requirements. Typically, those are on new streets, not on existing, but that'll be looked at. And they might, if they're proposed, yeah, it'll get looked at by staff, but they might have to, have a different species or plant them somewhere else. Don't know if that's above and beyond what the code requires.
The other question I have is the East Drive that's coming off, where I don't know, is that China Dynasty, the
Yeah, I believe that's
restaurant
correct.
there? Currently, that is how you access coaches now. There is no stacking there. So I don't know, if I was using sheets, I would pull in there, but I would exit to the west. So I really wouldn't come back out unless I needed to turn east, and I have favor of the light. What are your thoughts about moving that further away from Granville Street to get a little bit more stacking?
That is where I will turn it over to our engineering and traffic consultants. So, thank you.
Hello, Braden Putnam, V3 Companies, design engineer on this project. So with the design constraints of this site, we can certainly look at it more to move that more north, but for our truck routing and deliveries, it's really tight to get it in the way it is even now. That's why you've heard a few times before that the building is towards the back of the parcel rather than the front. It's just been quite a challenge to get the truck routing to work. But we'll certainly look at it and see if there's a better option to move that drive more north on that east side.
So when you say truck, that's the fuel trucks
Yes.
for the tanks is coming
Yep.
in there?
Yep.
So what was the consideration of your thought of leaving the west side completely open with a shared drive versus what is to the east with the trees and landscaping again? Was there any consideration of just leaving both of them shared drives so you can pull in and out?
Yeah, there can be further consideration on that. Do you have any thoughts on that, Drew?
Good evening. Drew Laurent with Carpenter Marty, 6612 Single Tree Drive, Columbus, Ohio. We are looking at queuing at that signal to determine what kind of stacking is needed before that drive would be blocked. Can you repeat your question about the cross-access again?
Yeah, so the west side looks like it's a shared drive with Alpine, the building is over there to the left. So is there a curb there? Is
Looks
there
like it's pretty open.
pretty open?
Yeah.
So it
That's the
almost
way
looks
it
like-
is, kind of the way it
almost looks
is.
like you'd want the other side to be open, a little bit more open also, but I don't know if you guys were just trying to get a streetscape to kick you down to the park.
So the east side there, the idea with the landscaping was to try to bridge the connectivity to the park and try to create a walkway that was actually pleasant to walk to the park as opposed to just a sidewalk. So the landscaping proposed on the right side, that was the reasoning for that. We saw that as the main connection point to the park. All the landscaping, by the way, is very preliminary proposal, and we're very willing to, flex however we need to.
So just a comment being a workshop, so is there a sidewalk in your mind that's along that little drive that goes back
Yes.
Because currently, there is no sidewalk. I mean, the kids just use a skateboard, they just go right down the road.
Yeah, the idea is to create a connection there. So yeah, there would be a proposed sidewalk connecting to the back of the park.
What is there, so are you guys leasing this for 10 years, 20 years? Did you purchase the property?
I believe it's a 30 year.
30 years?
I could be mistaken, but, so I believe it's 30. Typically, it's 25 to 30-year leases.
And you're gonna get us a count, some kind of traffic study for
Yeah,
that, which will help for the site,
Yeah, go ahead.
all right?
Just a little bit of a breakdown. We received the scope of the traffic impact study from the city of Gahanna, I think it was 2 weeks ago. So that's currently in progress, collecting the count data and doing all the analysis. So it's in the works.
Thank you. No more questions, Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Mr. Greenberg?
I do have a couple of questions. First, is there any issues with flooding? Because I saw there were flood zones that I looked at when I was reviewing this, and is there a concern for flooding on your site?
So we have also been well aware of the flood zone, and we've taken a look, and there is a flood use application that we'll have to apply for, but our build site and stuff is not in any concern of the floodplain use there.
Okay. Last time, when you guys approached us, I had asked about what the company does as far as recycling, and basically didn't get a real clear answer. I know you have a dumpster out back. Is it just going to be a dumpster for refuse, or is there going to be one for cardboard and other materials that are that
Understood,
come into
yeah.
the site? Huh?
No, I believe it is just a typical dumpster use in the back there.
Right, so there won't be any environmental recycling or anything? What was that?
So the environmental, yeah, the recycling is not in part of the environmental impact, but the other considerations that Sheets takes into account for the site is well accounted for. So, but yeah, there's no recycling for the dumpsters.
Okay. So my last question, I guess, and I'd ask Mr. Blackford to reiterate what he said at the outset of the meeting. This facility would not be eligible to go into this spot if the new zoning was approved by council. Is that correct?
Correct. It would require rezoning to a different commercial designation than what we're proposing for this area of the city, yes.
Okay, but you're moving quickly to avoid that.
In all scope, like, they don't have to move that quickly, they just have to submit the applications, and they've already done that, and then they would be vested under those current
Right.
rules. We've had other applications, so,
Un-
yeah.
Understood, but the bottom line for me is the city doesn't really want to have a gas station in that area and on our street there at that point, but you're moving quickly so you don't have to deal with future regulations on that.
It's not necessarily about avoiding anything. It's trying to meet the current standards as is. It's already a developed site. And then we're hoping that this will bridge the connectivity between the park and also help with the development to the east and west of that site.
And how are you going to, tell me or describe the bridge to the park? What is that?
So like we discussed here just a minute ago, the sidewalk and the landscaping bridges that drive back to the park. Also, just having the Sheets as a restaurant there for the park visitors is a positive impact. The architecture of the Sheets, as you guys have known, like, Sheets takes the quality very, it's very important to Sheets to represent high-quality standards, that it's high-quality materials there, it's not a cheap facade. Like, the whole point is to put a nice development there. Like I said, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
That's perfect. I just wanted to, thank you, DW, address the playing beat the clock issue so we can get ahead of a change in the code. Really, I think Michael said it correctly. Right now, we would go through the process for a conditional use, whereas in the future, If we had identified this site under your, let's say you've done all the homework and have a new code in place, we would still ask for a rezoning to rezone the subject site to permit a gas station. I believe, I have a little bit of deal fog, Michael, but the major difference would probably be that we'd have to go to city council on the rezoning as opposed to a conditional use permit, which is in the purview of Planning and Zoning Commission. So, you know, I'd love to meet your council members, but the current lay of the land doesn't dictate that. I didn't want you to think that we were trying to pull a fast one, because that's not the situation. We're committed to the site. We think it's a good site. And we would try to address all the other concerns that we can to prove ourselves.
You know, I'd assume that, you know, I like Sheets, I go to Sheets on occasion, but and you really want to get into Gahanna, obviously, because you've come to
Yes.
2 sites. Are there other sites that you have looked at that are acceptable, that you decided to go with this one over others?
I'm not familiar with all the activity. I'm familiar with 2 alternative sites that didn't pass muster with the criteria that we're looking for. Quite frankly, they would have been more difficult from a zoning perspective as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Soriano?
Thanks, Mr. Mako. Are we focused on mostly on questions right now versus comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Understanding how the current, I'm sure Coaches doesn't see quite the volume of traffic that a Sheets might. That current curb cut, how you're entering Coaches kind of immediately as you, from the east, as you're coming into, onto the property from the light. Do you all see any issue with queuing or given that there is a traffic light there, with how that could affect that pinch point?
Drew?
Yes, so there will definitely be some additional queuing at the signal. You know, we haven't analyzed anything yet, so I don't have any numbers to share or anything like that, but there's a lot of similar Sheets sites that are designed like this around central Ohio, and we do take a hard look at where that internal access point is. If that thing's blocked and you get somebody trying to turn left into that access, you're going to back up onto Granville Street, which is not ideal for anybody. So as a part of the study, I know this is like the initial concept. We are going to be looking into that. Obviously, you can see there is a rear access at the very northeast section of the property, which in my opinion would be ideal for the ingress and egress, but there's other similar Sheet sites I know, you know, that have had restricted access closer to the main line. You know, whether it's like a right in, right out or something similar. So we'll be looking at all that in the traffic study once we get a little further along.
Got it. And we've been talking, or at least it was mentioned, about a bridge to the park, but there isn't really anything physical that bridges to the park, right? I mean, you're still traversing the parking lot adjacent to Shull.
Correct. That terminology, I'd say connectivity to the park as opposed
Got
to
it.
bridge.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. I have comments, but no questions.
Mr. DeMarkin?
Thank you, Mr. Mako. A couple questions. The drawing here shows a monument sign. We really didn't talk about it. Frequently, we need variances for monument signs. Does this monument sign meet our code in a position far enough from the road where it's allowed as is?
I haven't fly-spec'd it.
I was going to say, we have a signage analysis actually underway currently to address any of those variances. In the event that we would need a variance or a change, we would obviously apply for a variance application or make adjustments accordingly.
Including the potential placement of that monument sign?
Yes, correct. Yeah, I do know there was a setback there from Granville Road. I think it was 15 feet. So, because we have already adjusted that a couple times on the site plan. So, but that is subject to change as well. Like I said, we have enlisted zoning resources to do a signage analysis, and that is underway currently.
My colleague, Mr. Wester, can talk about the dangers of signs too close to the road. And then also, you know, when we looked at the other sheets, there was lots of variances dealing with signage. So when you said, when Attorney Shannon mentioned, one minor variance for the setback on the dumpsters, there could be more variances for signage.
Yeah, Mr. Shannon was referring, so we've already turned in an application for variances for the site, but the signage is a separate analysis we're undergoing currently.
Okay. And
The dumpster was the variance, recognized already.
so you want to move the dumpster back in order to expand the brick pavement there on the east side of the building. Are those picnic tables? Is that outdoor seating?
Yes. Typically, so one thing I do want to mention is that different from the last sheets you guys saw, this is a much smaller residential size sheets. I believe the last proposal had 8 to 10 pumps in the front. This one has 5. The store is smaller scale. It's 6,000 square feet roughly. So the scale of this one is a little different than the one you previously saw.
So my kids did not go to Gahanna High School, but many of our members here have. It is my understanding that the high school kids do leave campus to eat lunch.
Yeah.
You're 200 yards from the high school, roughly. I'll disagree with the argument that you do more volume in food than you do in gas, but that's for another day. But you will get significant high school traffic at lunchtime. Where do they sit? Where do they go? What do they do?
Inside, Sheets has plenty of indoor seating as well. The high school, by the way, was anticipated as some of our traffic and food service. That's also a reason we picked this location. The connectivity between the Creekside District on the west and the high school was something we considered. So yeah, in terms of seating though, the inside has plenty of indoor seating for the kids to eat lunch.
Okay. That is all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Wester?
Thank you, Chair. About 25 years ago, ODOT in its infinite wisdom destroyed Granville Street. They took it from 3 lanes to 5 lanes. At the start of the library project, about, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years ago, there was some talk, and it was only conversation, about, I'm going to use my word, gentrifying Granville Street. Take it back to 3 lanes, bump outs, and traffic calming. In fact, I was at a meeting where there was a question about traffic calming. Has that been considered in this design? You don't have to answer that, all right? A couple of years ago, some of the members of this commission may remember, it was in front of us with late night deliveries to BP and Donato's, I believe. Okay? Is that situation in effect here with the sheets? And this is a 24-hour in operation, is it not?
Correct.
When I looked at the drawings in, where are the property lines? Or are,
This is a 1.35 acre site. So the property lines are to the west there as where that cursor is, and then to the east as well, basically, where the tree line is. So it's in between the 2 existing restaurants and businesses, and it's the Coach's site only which is being developed. That's what I was trying to explain earlier. I think when we met with planning initially, they thought we were developing all 3 parcels, and that is not the case. We've scaled down much smaller. This is a community size, like Sheets operation and restaurant. We're only developing the Coach's parcel. We're not doing any parcel changes.
the unique thing about this one, there's no drive-through.
Correct, yeah.
And I would think that would be one of the things, conditional use. I have a concern about traffic on Granville Street. couple other things. Is this pedestrian-friendly, bike-friendly? What do we have for traffic calming? I don't know what the volume, what your traffic volume is, what your truck volume, whatnot. And I'm not going to say Sheets becomes a destination, but it certainly is a high volume. And it adds to a high volume street already. I can't help but think or look that if I drive through Westerville on State Street, and it's a very vibrant business district. It's 3 lanes, it's got parking in front, side street parking. I drove out to Hilliard. There's a Sheets on Cemetery Road, and it's got a side entry. I don't think it has an entry right off of Cemetery Road. But when I looked at those streets and the vibrancy and the business, they're narrowed. Traffic calming, road diet, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure gas stations are catalysts for redevelopment. Look at the Sheets on Cassidy Avenue. In there. I think those are, what I'm throwing out are items for concern, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
Correct.
You know, I think Sheets is a wonderful company, great product, very aggressive for growth and whatnot. But I have to look at how does it fit within my community? And what can I ask for? Because I'm only getting one shot.
No, completely understand. And so let me address the traffic concerns just really quickly. So with this Sheets, this, like I said before, it's scaled down. People will not be, the positioning of the Sheets within Gahanna, this will serve the existing traffic patterns. This is not a Sheets that is large scale for trucks or anything. People are not driving off the highway out of their way to go to this specific location. They'll have passed 3 gas stations by the time they would even get to this Sheets. This Sheets is to serve the Gahanna community and the existing traffic patterns that exist. That's why we see this one more as a restaurant as well. We spoke about the high school kids coming for lunch. Like we see people coming here for a late night snack. Like this is to serve more of the community and not, as you say, a traffic generating gas station. And I totally understand your concerns too with the ones you've mentioned. Some are right off the freeways, and those do generate traffic because it's a destination off the freeway. This one is not, it's a much smaller scale store, so it's not meant to do that, Tom.
That's the last of my questions. Thank you.
Okay, we're actually running up against time, so I want to try and keep our time schedules. So real quickly, just open it up to any last comments from the Planning Commission, if we could go quickly.
Yeah, thank you,
Yep,
Mr. Chair.
Mr.
So, in concern for everyone's time, I'll be brief. I'm a fan of Sheets. Like Mr. Greenberg, I'm a customer, and as a parent of a teenager, and who's a high school student, like Mr. Tamarkin said, I can confirm that they do love Sheets. I spend a lot of money, both in person and by proxy, at Sheets. Regardless of the proportion of restaurant to gas, this use is automotive services, according to our code. And as Mr. Blackford, as he always does, very distinctly and thoroughly illustrated, it's a conditional use in our current zone. And understanding that we have to apply the code that exists today, it is a conditional use to consider. The future use, though, this area will not be zoned commercial. It will be our new Creekside mixed use. And also, incidentally, the automotive services will not be permitted in that area. And they also won't be permitted in the neighborhood commercial zone, which is where the last project was considered. They will be permitted in our new innovative and manufacturing zoning, and there'll be a conditional use in what we call the general commercial zone, as I understand how the new zoning code is going to work. Mr. Shannon eloquently pulled out of our code the word shall, and I will defer to his legalese in understanding that over mine, but also in that same section, subsection C, it talks about disapproval of conditional uses. And it says the planning commission shall only disapprove an application for a conditional use if any one of the following reasons exist. One of the reasons that we have to consider is the proposed development is not in keeping with the existing land use character and physical development potential of this area. So should this project move forward, that's the area where I'm going to be looking when I make a decision. And just one last thing about rezoning. Rezonings do come to Planning Commission for recommendation for approval to City Council. So should a rezoning be in the future, we'll see you again. And I hope that should this project not move forward as intended, I do hope that there will be another opportunity in the city to consider. Mr. Chair, that's my comment.
Thank you. Mr. Western? Mr. Shabaka?
I'll take my 30 seconds. I like the scale of it. I like the setback. Right now, I'm looking at the existing uses, and I know what we want in the future, but the tenant to the east has just put a lot of money into their project to develop that. So it's kind of balanced between now and the future, and it seems like the Alpine is doing really well. I don't see anything really moving, no matter what we do, and rezone that property. It seems like it fits, so that's all I have.
Mr. Greenberg? Mr. Serrano?
Yeah, I'll take my 30 seconds. Thank you all. I know I know several of you personally. I've worked with Mr. Shannon before, so I want to thank everybody. I am a customer of Sheets also. I did want to say that Mr. Hicks, I think, highlighted the point I wanted to make, but I just want to reemphasize that my biggest issue is with character. I don't think it meets item 3 and 4 of the conditional use, and I certainly don't think it meets the future potential of the site, given what the city of Gahanna is looking to do for this corridor, based on those zoning changes. I worry about looking at a filling station here for the next 30 to 50 years, whatever the longevity of these buildings are. And I know the point is going to be made about restaurant versus filling station. It's going to be a filling station because that's what's put in front. I mean, that's what, if it wasn't, the pumps would be in the back. I think that we've had, over time, we've had this tendency to push all these buildings off the street with parking in front, and it just makes for an urban corridor that isn't befitting, I think, of what we want to see out of Granville. And so fundamentally, I just don't know how to, the fact that it is a filling station and it is located where it is, I don't know how I can, would be able to move forward with a conditional use approval if this were to come back. So those are my comments.
Mr. Tamarkin?
I'm good. I made my comments.
Okay, I really don't have much to add. I think it's going to be very, my two cents is that I think you really need to hone in on your traffic studies and what that's going to show. Would I be correct to assume that you're also going to be looking at the internal circulation?
Yeah,
Okay,
most definitely.
all right. Well, given the time, I'm going to wrap up this meeting. Thanks again for coming out. Lots of good discussions, and we'll be adjourned.
Again, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Please stand for the pledge.
Please hang on just 1 second. I apologize. Please.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Hicks. Pam, roll call.
Greenberg,
Here?
Hicks,
Here.
Mako,
Here?
Chapaca,
Here.
Suriano,
Here.
Tamarkin,
Here.
Wester.
Here.
Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No, sir.
Hearing none. The Planning Commission meeting minutes for November 1st were out. Is there any comments or corrections on that? Do I have a motion?
So moved by Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Is there a second?
Second, Tamarkin.
Mr. Tamarkin? We have a motion by Mr. Hick and second by Mr. Tamarkin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Hicks,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Chapaca,
Yes.
Suriano.
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Motion passes. We move to the portion where the applicants and speakers will be sworn in. Mr. Roth, City Attorney, will you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are now at the public hearing portion of the meeting. The public hearing will operate as follows. Administrative staff will make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant or their representative may then make a presentation or comment on the application. Public comment will then be open for 3 minutes allowed per speaker. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Speakers must complete a speaker slip and come to the podium and state their name. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes to comment. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. If there is more than one application pending for a particular address, the presentation on each application may be consolidated and presented as one. At this time, will persons wishing to present testimony this evening please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do. I do. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now moving to the application portion. I will read each item in full. Before we proceed, we have a variance application. Variance application number V00232023 to consider variance application to vary chapters 1167.17B of the codified ordinances of the City of Gahanna to allow for a shed installation on the property located at 1036 Arcaro Drive, parcel ID 025-008669, current zoning SF3. Jason Warman, applicant. We'll turn it over to Maddie and Logan for the presentation.
What?
Okay, the first application tonight is a variance request for a property located at 1036 Arcaro Drive for the placement of a shed. This is the zoning map for the area. The property is located on the south of Arcaro Drive and is zoned SF3, which is a single-family residential district. On this map, you can also see there is a large pond located to the south of the site that does take up a portion of the site itself. So the applicant is requesting approval of a variance to allow for a shed to be located to the side of an existing home. Sheds are considered unattached accessory structures, and the zoning code states that All unattached accessory structures in residential districts must be located to the rear of the home. The side yard setback for unattached accessory structures is 5 feet, and the shed meets this setback as it is 14 feet from the east property line, so the variance is just for the location of the shed and not the setback. The applicant states that this is the best location for the shed due to the pond in the backyard, the existing deck in the backyard, as well as the slope of the yard. Here is a site plan that was submitted by the applicant. The proposed shed is shown in green. As mentioned, it's located 14 feet from the east property line and meets all setback requirements. The pond is also shown on the southern part of the site. Here is the existing condition of the home right now. This is the east side of the home where the shed will be located. In this photo, you can see the pond at the rear of the site as well as the slope of the yard. There is also one existing tree right next to the garage that will partially screen the shed from Arcaro Drive. However, without additional screening, the shed will still be visible from the right-of-way. Here is another photo of the home from the rear. This is also taken from the east side of the property. So in this photo, you can see the difference in grade from the front of the yard to the rear of the yard, as well as the existing deck. Here is a photo that was submitted by the applicant showing the scale of the shed and the appearance. Here's the variance criteria that must be met in order to grant approval of a variance. The first is that there are special circumstances or conditions applying to the land, building, or use. The second is that the granting of the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights. And the third is that the variance will not have any negative effects on the neighborhood. Staff recommends approval of the application as submitted. Special circumstances exist due to the sloping of the lot and the pond that takes up part of the rear yard. Due to this, there's limited locations available for shed placement. Additionally, as mentioned, the shed is partially screened by existing landscaping, but Planning Commission may add a condition for additional screening if desired. Neighbors to the east of this site submitted a comment voicing their approval for the shed variance, and this is the site that would be adjacent to the shed. Finally, multiple variances have been approved in the past for sheds located to the side of a home. And with that, I turn it back to the commission.
Thank you, Maddie. We now open the public portion of the applicant, and would the applicant like to make a comment? If so, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address, and then kind of stand there in case we got any questions.
So I'm Jason Warman, and I'm the homeowner along with my wife, Jillian. She explained everything pretty well, but I would like to just mention that there are numerous sheds on the sides of houses in my neighborhood, so I don't think that it will negatively impact the rest of my neighborhood just because it seems to be a pattern. So that's pretty much everything, though.
Very good. And there was no other letters or comments?
No, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. So we'll close the public portion, and now we'll open it up for questions from the commission. Mr. Hicks.
Thank you. Mr. Warman, have you started construction on the shed?
No, it looks exactly like the picture. There's some bags of shingles laying on the ground out there, but yeah, it looks like that.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Wester?
No questions.
Mr. May?
Right, so one quick question. Notice, looking at the picture that is up on the screen, and then also flipped on Google Street View, do you happen to know, is there any type of utility easement that the utility companies have, probably cable going to that box there?
We had the yard marked, and it was not near any of the cables that were marked or anything.
Okay.
Yeah, we had somebody come out to lay flags down.
Well, I guess the question, or more, this is more so to protect you, is just making sure that you're not going to be encroaching on any recorded easements there, because the last thing I want you to do is to get your variances and everything, and then find out that you're, 2 feet into someone's easement, they have the legal right to come and rip it out. So just a little word for the wise. Thank you.
Hi, is there any, Mr. Warman, is there any other than the tree landscaping that you're going to put around?
I didn't have anything planned, but I'd be willing to do more landscaping to help hide it even more.
I think somebody's coming to help you here.
I'm Jillian, I'm his wife. I was hoping that on the back of the shed, we could add a trellis and put vines on the side of it. That's what I had planned.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gahanna?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is it, the shed doesn't have a foundation, does it? Or is it just sitting like on skids, or has it?
Can you go back to the image of the shed? So we had to explain that it was on like a slight slope, and they said that they would like build any necessary skid to help get it leveled.
To get it
Yeah,
flat.
Get it leveled.
And I know, this probably isn't a question for you all, but we have I think a maximum, I don't know if it's still a maximum of like a 14 by 14 or 12 by 12 for a shed before it becomes like something bigger.
Yeah, I believe it has to be 120 square feet or less.
Does it? Okay, so there isn't a minimum though, right? Because this is honestly like more of it's almost like an exterior closet than it is a shed, right? Is there a minimum?
No, there's no minimum. It would still be considered an unattached accessory structure, so it would still have to be to the rear of the home.
Got it. Okay, no questions. Thanks.
Mr. Gahanna? Mr. Tamarkin?
I have no questions.
I have one. What's your color palette? You gonna paint it?
So it's going to be the same color as the existing house, basically.
Well, currently, it's not going to be painted. We were hoping to paint the exterior of the house a different color, and then the shed would be painted that color.
And we have the same, those shingles that are in the bag on the ground right there are matching shingles from the roof. We just got our roof replaced.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move for approval on variance 0023, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Wester. Is there a second?
Second, Greenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. We have a motion by Mr. Hicks and seconded by Mr. Greenberg. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Motion by Mr. Wester.
Yes, sir.
Motion by Mr. Wester.
Oh, Mr. Wester. Who did I say?
Hicks.
Oh. Hey, you guys look alike.
Don't insult Mr. Wester like that.
Motion by Mr. Wester and seconded by Mr. Greenberg. Is there any discussions on it? Hearing none, roll call?
Wester,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Chapaca,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thanks for bringing it forward.
Thank you very much.
Our next item is for the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene. It is a design review application and a final development plan. I'm going to say both of these up once, and we can talk about them as a group, but we'll vote on them individually. A design review application number DR-0019-2023 to consider a design review application for a site plan and building design for property located at 425 South Hamilton Road, parcel ID 025-000406, current zoning RID. Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Jeff Hitchinson, applicant. There is also a final development plan application, FDP-0007-2023, to consider a final development plan application for a 35.7 acre tract at 425 South Hamilton Road, parcel ID 025-000406, current zoning RID. Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Jeff Hutchinson, applicant for that. I will turn it over now to Maddie or Logan for the presentation.
As mentioned, these are a final development plan and design review applications for 425 South Hamilton Road. Here is a zoning map. The parcel is zoned Restricted Institutional District and is located on the west side of South Hamilton Road, just north of I-270. Here is a zoomed-in map of the site. The approximate location of the modular classroom is underneath the red star. This is just to show the dense vegetation to the south of the classroom and the west of the classroom. And also, it's worth noting that it's located behind all other structures already on the site, and it will not be visible from any right-of-way. So this is a design review and final development plan application for a modular classroom. The applicant states that the classroom will be temporary and will be removed after 3 years or less. The size of the structure is 44 by 23 feet approximately and is 1,027 square feet. It is a pre-manufactured structure, and the exterior consists of hardy panel siding and vinyl skirt panels. The applicant has stated that the design options are limited since it is a pre-manufactured structure. As mentioned, it's located to the rear of the existing school building off of an existing drive, so there will be no new drive constructed for this building. It is not visible from any right-of-way, and it will not be located in the existing parking lot, so there will be no parking spaces removed or added, and parking requirements will still be met after the construction of the building. Here is a site plan that was submitted by the applicant. The location of the modular classroom is in red. Since the site is made up of multiple parcels, there are property lines that go through the middle of the site that still have setback requirements. So the yellow line on the site plan is a property line that has 25-foot side yard setbacks on either side. The modular classroom is approximately 30 feet from that side yard setback, so all setback requirements are met with this application. Here's a rendering of the modular classroom building. This view is from the parking lot. It shows the existing drive that the structure will be located off of, as well as the materials. Here's the review criteria for a design review and final development plan. Not all of the design review criteria are fully applicable in this situation since it is a pre-manufactured building and is a temporary structure. Staff recommends approval of both of the applications. The applicant states that the modular classroom is necessary for the number of students and will be temporary. All applicable code requirements have been met and there are no variances required with this application. Planning Commission may add conditions for additional screening and landscaping or a time restriction if desired.
Thank you, Betty. We now open the public portion. Would the applicant like to comment? Please come up to the mic, state your names and addresses, and stay for comments.
My name is Jeff Hutchison. I'm the applicant, and I'm with the McKnight Group, McKnight Hostam Architects specifically, and it's at 3351 McDowell Road, Grove City, Ohio, 43123.
And I'm Mike Fluhart. I'm head of school at Shepherd Christian School. My home address is 3295 Farmbrook Drive, Grove City as well, Ohio, 123.
Thank you, Mike.
At this time, I don't have any additional comments. I'm open for questions.
All right, very good. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public portion and now open it up for comments from the commission. Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hutchison, Mr. Fluhart, talk to me about the temporary nature and your intent of this modular building.
We're looking at trying to buy ourselves a little bit of time. We've been blessed with some unbelievable growth over the last couple of years, and we're full. So we know at some point we're going to be coming back to you in the next couple of years to build. We just got to buy. We've got to be able to get into next year and have enough room space while we work with McKnight Group for additional plans for construction. So what this does is it buys us 3 years, because that's what they're telling us by the planning time and approval time and construction time. It's going to take that. The unit we're buying is a nice unit, but I've worked with other schools and have had modulars, and in reality, 3, maximum 5 years, they're a little shot. So we're even the way we're doing the funding right now. The funding will be purchased using state funds, and then that way we can go back in 3 years and get the state to take it back.
So definitely look forward to you coming back with a permanent
That's the
building.
goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal right now.
Because it is my experience with modular units at schools that they're not temporary. They stick around forever. So I'm very glad to hear that your intent is that it will be removed at some point and a permanent structure will go into place.
That's
At
the
least that's your
plan.
plan.
We have no real desire to have it for years.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, if I might add, we did the last addition, the actual school building, that H-looking building that's right next to it, we did that a number of years ago. And I think previously, there was a module that was set on the east side of that building, which kind of raised a little bit of red flags and consternation. So we made sure we didn't do that. So we put it in the back to try and avoid anything.
Is there, thank you, is there a schedule for the permanent structure? Design time, bid time, start of construction, occupancy?
We have not sat down and finalized any kind of a schedule, but typically in our experience, it has been that you would have a year to try and do planning to figure out what's going to go. Plus, there's going to be another year maybe to submit drawings for zoning approval and planning, and then starting the construction, depending on the size of the building, could be a year. So that's where the 3 years came in. So we don't have a hard schedule as of this moment. This was the first step to see where we would go from here.
Thank you.
Two quick questions. First, I might have missed this, but what's the capacity of this temporary building?
It's currently designed as one full classroom. I think it was a total of like, it's here in the, yeah, but I don't want to state it wrong.
I believe it was like 48, 49 people.
Yeah, but our intent is not actually not to move it as a classroom. We do a lot of interventions with students, reading, English as a second language. So we're going to be setting up smaller tutoring centers in this room. So at no one time will there be more than about 15 people in this. What that does is it frees up a room, a large room that's being used in the school now, that I can actually make 2 classrooms out of it.
Okay.
The maximum occupancy as submitted was 48 occupants.
Okay. And then, kind of going off of what Mr. West said, and again, I get this might be a little premature, but if you do a permanent type of expansion, any ideas where that go on your existing footprint?
Yeah, can I help? Yeah. The forefathers to the school, if you look at the H on it'd be the east side, that was actually designed to be expanded, where we can put 4 more classrooms on that H, and we've got the property there. So the discussions right now is to go further out with the H and add, it would be a total of 8 more classrooms. And then move I don't know if you want to get into it now, but move the playground that's existing there down into the field. If you look, we've got the total complex is 32 acres. So we're trying to reclaim that grass area, and the playground would move down there, and we could expand the building out that way.
Okay. Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. No questions. Mr. Soriano.
No questions for me, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You just mentioned you have 32 acres, so I assume most of the land to the west and to the south you already own.
Yeah.
So when we saw the picture earlier with all that grassy area,
That's all.
yours. So we're not going to, neighbors aren't going to see this either. It's not going to be visible from the road, not going to be visible from neighbors.
No, over the years, if you look on it'd be the north side, most of the houses there, I mean, the first 2 or 3 houses the church already owns, so that's not a conflict. As you move down, you've got a tree line already almost in the back of each one of those houses already. But you're looking at considerable distance to those houses.
Excellent.
And then on the south side, it's all wooded to clear to 270.
And I believe the south side is owned by the city of Gahanna or the city of Columbus, around the highway. On the one photo that you had the purple that was on there. It shows the extent of the property. So the green that's to the bottom of that is owned by a municipality.
Good. I assume this gets built just over dirt? You don't put a cement pad under it?
Correct. There are going to be foundations that are dug in and concreted to be able to hold up the thing. Then when the unit's going to be removed, those will be extracted and then smoothed over.
In the drawing we saw is an exact drawing, no windows?
That is correct. That's the information that we received from the manufacturer of the unit.
Those are my only questions.
Thank you, Mr. Markin. Pam, did we receive any kind of
We
comments?
just received phone calls wanting to know what they were doing, and the lady was fine with, she just needed explanation of what was being put in.
Thank you, Pam. I have no comments. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion for approval of DR-0019-2023.
Thank you, Mr. DeMarco. Is there a second?
Second, Soriano.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. We have a motion for the design review application by Mr. DeMarco and seconded by Mr. Soriano. Are there any discussions or comments on the issue?
Just one comment for me. I know I'm not super familiar with manufactured classrooms, but if there is an option for Windows, a lot of data suggests kids learn, we all learn better when we have visuals to outside natural light. You guys are on a wooded lot, and I'm sure there's a lot of beautiful stuff to look at. So, but I'll be in support.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. Mr. Hicks?
Mr. Chair, thank you. SHPNAS is a great asset to this community and the programming that they offer to families and children, especially. I know we've taken advantage of that growing up, and the growth is a good problem to have, and with the understanding that this is truly temporary in nature and that you have a bigger plan in mind, I'll definitely be in support of both applications.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
I'll support both applications. Also, I echo what Mr. Hicks said, that they run a great program there.
I got a couple comments on, I would say before you guys do the next addition or something, combine the lots. That property line running through the building just looks kind of haphazard. I would think that would have been done anyway when you did the building, but, so combine those lots, and I definitely want to echo what Mr. Soriano said, quality of space, get some windows in there, and, yeah, before you show this to the public, put some windows in it. Roll call.
Markin?
Yes.
Soriano?
Yes.
Chappaka?
Yes.
Wester?
Yes.
Greenberg?
Yes.
Hicks?
Yes.
Mako?
Yes.
So design review application passes. Now we will go on to the final development plan. So I have a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion for approval of FDP-0007-2023.
Second, Soriano.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. We have a motion by Mr. DeMarco and seconded by Mr. Soriano for the final development plan application. Is there any discussion or comments?
I was interested to learn that what triggers architects is a property line through a building, so I'll take that away from this.
Any other comments? None? Pam, roll call?
Markin?
Yes.
Soriano?
Yes.
Wester?
Yes.
Greenberg?
Yes.
Hicks?
Yes.
Mako?
Yes.
Chappaka?
Yes. Motion carries. Thanks for bringing it before us.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to McCorkle Park, we have a conditional use application and a design review application. I will read both in its entirety to begin with. For the conditional use, numbers CU-0005-2023, to consider a conditional use application for property located at 200 McCutcheon Road, parcel ID 025-004340, current zoning SF3, McCorkle Park Project. Alan Little, Gahanna Parks and Recreation is the applicant. Also a design review application, number DR-0020-2023, to consider a design review application for a site plan and playground for property located at 200 McCutcheon Road, parcel ID 025-004340, current zoning SF3, McCorkle Park Playground Project. Alan Little again from the Gahanna Parks and Recreation applicant. Turn it over now for the administration for a presentation from Matt or Logan.
Good evening. This application, the site is located at the terminus of McCutcheon on the north side. As stated, this is McCorkle Park. The request,
I normally have a louder voice. So the request is for a conditional use and design review for the installation of new playground equipment. This will be located where the existing playground area is. So part of the application will be the removal of the 4,500 square foot area and then installation of an approximately same size of pervious playground. Several play structures as part of this, which will actually complement existing playground structures that are just south of this, that are on the north side of that park building. So the location of it will meet all of the setback requirements and actually be located further from the property than the current parks building. As provided on the rendering, the proposed playground equipment will be red and silver, which will match the existing equipment that already exists as part of the park. The tallest play structure is just over 15 feet tall, which does meet the height requirements of the SF3 district. And there are no additional lighting or landscaping requirements or proposed modifications with this application. The conditional use is for public parks in SF3 and is required because there was no documentation on a prior approval for this site. It has operated as a park for a number of years. So based off of the 4 conditional use criteria listed on the screen, staff is recommending approval of that with this application. And with regard to the design review, based off of the criteria, staff supports the design review. However, the Planning Commission does have the purview to request any additional modification to the design or materials of the structures. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Logan. We now open the public portion. Is the applicant here and would like to make a comment? State your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Stephanie Farrell, the Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Gahanna. Would you like my home address?
Yes.
631 Wittenberg Court, Lancaster, Ohio, 43130. I have no additional comment, but happy to answer any questions that you may have in regard to this application.
Thank you. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? Please step up to the mic, state your name. Stephanie, if you can step off to the side real quick.
My name is Jim McGrath. I live at 205 McCutcheon, which is directly across the street from this McCorkle Park. My only suggestion is at night, I know that there are teenagers that will congregate at the park, and I might suggest that there be a light that comes on, motion sensor or something like that, unless you feel that having a light sometimes attracts the teenagers. And I could be convinced if that's the case, but it would be nice if there was some kind of lighting there.
All right, good. Thank you, Jim. Is there anybody else? Not hearing any, we'll close the public portion. Now open it up for, oh, well, I was going to.
I have no further comment. I was just prepared to answer questions.
Oh, that lighting question was going to come up by the board here. So
Understood.
I was moving it along. So we close the public portion, now open up for questions from the commission. Oh, now I just said we were talking about the lights. Don't make me feel bad. Mako. Mr. Mako.
Yep. Real quick, could you elaborate a little bit on what new playground equipment is proposed to be installed?
Sure. The playground equipment in some of the photos, and I don't, Logan, do you want to put up the photos just for reference? In one case, the location of where the new equipment is placed is an improvement to just the use of the playground. So expanding the swing bay to add more swings and also the ability to add accessible swings as well as partner swings. It just helps add to the function of the play. And then also just updated features to make the playground more entertaining, updated, more I guess exciting and fun for youth. The ages are from 2 to 12 is the sight line for the specific equipment. You'll see the web climber. It's the pretty extravagant looking object to the left there. That is something that's very trending well in the parks industry. So of course, wanting to incorporate that into this new design.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bacon?
No further questions?
Mr. Greenberg?
Yes. Is any of the playground equipment made out of recycled material?
Not that I am aware of. No, not that I'm aware of. I can verify that, but I am not aware of any recycled material.
Okay, so for the future, in my past life, and we got grants for communities to get playground equipment, there are companies that make playground equipment out of recycled material.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Sariano?
No questions for me. Thank you.
No questions for me.
I have a few. Can you bring up the site plan?
Yes.
So the Star, is this park actually just used during when football games are on by the people that are attending for like extra activity for people that aren't playing? Or is this used all day or?
It's used often. The usage does increase when there's scheduled practices or scheduled games there, of course, just because of the volume is intensified with programmed space. But the program or the playground is used by local residents and then also by individuals who actually purposefully attend. Of course, with any type of updated design of playground, we expect to see that participation only increase to come check out the new features. So yes, to answer your question, it's used along with program space, but then also just from users who come just to participate with the playground.
So is it considered a neighborhood playground? So what is the policy in Gahanna for lighting?
Policy for lighting, I can't regurgitate what the policy for lighting is. I will state that the park does close at dusk. That is a park rule, so that the park is not open for public use after dusk.
So does it get any ambient light from any street lighting there along McCutcheon at all, or?
In some cases, yes, but not for the purpose of the use of the amenities within the park.
It might be bright enough for keep people there a little bit longer after dusk. And
It's possible, absolutely.
is that a concern on your part of, I mean, is there a gathering there, or is it a history of gathering, or?
Well, obviously, recognizing public comment from this evening, anytime that we understand activity that is not appropriate or not intended, if there's any activity that's not favorable, then we will contact our police department and let them know that there's activity there that is not appropriate in order to increase visibility there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hearing no other comments, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move for the approval of application CU-0005-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Is there a second?
Second, Tamarkin.
Mr. Tamarkin. We have a motion by Mr. Greenberg and a second by Mr. Tamarkin for the conditional use application. Is there any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. Pam, roll call?
Greenberg,
Yes?
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Chapaca,
Yes.
Siriano.
Yes.
Motion carries. Do we have a motion for the design review application?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to approval design review application DR-0020-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Is there a second?
Second, Tamarkin.
Thank you, Mr. Tamarkin. We have a motion by Mr. Greenberg and seconded by Mr. Tamarkin for the design review application. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Pam, roll call?
Greenberg,
Yes?
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Chapaca,
Yes.
Siriano.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Looks like a beautiful little park.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have the Ambassador Commons Park Project. Again, it's a conditional use and a design review application. I will read both in its entirety to get us started. Conditional use application CU-0006-2023 to consider a conditional use application for property located at 639 Highlands Drive, parcel ID 025-009306, current zoning SF3, Ambassador Commons Park Project. Aaron Little, Gahanna Parks and Recreation applicant. Design review application DR-0021-2023 to consider a design review application for landscaping, playground, and new ADA path for property located at 639 Highlands Drive, parcel ID 025-009306, current zoning SF3, Ambassador Commons Park Project. Alan Little, Gahanna Parks and Recreation applicant. I now turn it over to Logan for administration report.
This application is for Ambassador Commons Park, as mentioned, which is on the south side of Gahanna Highlands Drive along the curve. The request is for a conditional use and design review for the removal and installation of a new upgraded playground area. So the existing 3,000 square foot approximately area would be removed. A new area would be added with several play structures, 2 of which have shade canopies on the top. A new ADA sidewalk would connect to the sidewalk along the southern side of Gahanna Highlands. The proposed play structures would meet all setback requirements of the SF3 district. As shown in the renderings, the proposed equipment consists of primarily earth tone colors, greens, browns. Both of the shade canopies are the tallest portions of those structures, which would meet the height requirements of the SF3 district. And there is no additional lighting or landscaping that is proposed outside of the pervious play area underneath the structures with the expansion. Based off of this, the conditional use that's requested is for the public parks, which no documentation of a previous approval was provided, so that is required as part of this. And based off of the criteria, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use. And for the design review, based off of the criteria listed, staff is supportive of that. However, the Planning Commission does have the purview to request any modifications to the design or the materials. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Logan. We now open the public for comments. Would the applicant like to make a comment?
Hello again. I am Stephanie Farrell, Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Gahanna. Home address 631 Wittenberg Court, Lancaster, Ohio 43130. I have no additional comment. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Was there any kind of comments or correspondence from any of the
We
public?
had several phone calls that just requested explanation on what was going on at the park, and they were pleased that the playground's being redone.
All right. Is there anybody else here that's a speaker? Hearing none, we close the public portion and open up for commissioners or questions from the commission. None. Hearing none. I have one. What's the life cycle for this equipment?
We typically, with playgrounds, 18 to 20 years is what's identified for replacement. We do have certified playground safety instructors that review the playground equipment annually. So we, of course, would remove any type of features that don't meet the standard requirements. But ultimately, for a full structure, 18 to 20 years is what we have earmarked.
And what was the request for the ADA path? Was that something that's in the neighborhood?
This is something that we aim to improve with any type of improvements to parks. If we're able to make it easier for individuals who may have mobility challenges, if we make it easier for them to access the play features or any features within a park, that is our best practice.
Thank you. No other questions? Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for approval of item number CU-0006-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Mako. Is there a second?
Second by Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. We have a motion by Mr. Mako and seconded by Mr. Hicks for the conditional use application. Is there any discussion or comments? Hearing none. Pam, roll call.
Mako,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Chappaka,
Yes.
Siriano,
Yes.
Yes.
Wester.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
So do we have a motion for the design review application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for approval for item number DR-0021-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Mako. Is there a second?
Second by Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. We have a motion by Mr. Mako and seconded by Mr. Hicks for the design review application. Is there any discussion or comments? Seeing none, Pam, roll call?
Mako,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Chappaka,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries. So that ends our items. We move on to unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business?
Yes, sir.
So the new items, we have a zoning code discussion. So we welcome to the floor Mr. Blackford.
Good evening, everyone. Michael Blackford, Director of Planning. Apologize in advance because I do not have a PowerPoint presentation for you all tonight. So sorry for that disappointment. What we want to do tonight is, well, we provided the draft zoning code a couple of weeks ago. We wanted to get that in front of you all as soon as possible. So tonight, obviously, it's not an agenda item. We're not there yet. What I wanted to do tonight was just briefly provide a little bit of an overview of what we've been doing the last few years, what the goal of the document is trying to accomplish, and a little bit of what our next steps are. Obviously, if there's any questions, we can talk about anything, but I think that you've identified, but I think the goal is when we meet maybe next time, you'd have more time to digest the document, and it would really be a Q&A session at our next meeting. But, so what have we done? The land use plan was really the catalyst for the changes and the rewrite to our zoning code. The land use plan, we had a number of public engagements. The land use plan talked about the vision of the community. It talked about uses and architectural standards, and that's great, but a land use plan is a document that recommends policies. It doesn't require certain standards be met, as we talked about earlier with our workshop item. So in order to make those wish lists and those wants law, that's the zoning code. So we've been working the last several years on the zoning code rewrite. I think we've had about 5 formal drafts, but probably more like 100 with the amount of ins and outs. And as tedious as that is, nothing's more tedious than reviewing the zoning map, that proposed zoning map you have in front of you with the, I don't know how many 10,000 parcels we have and such. But take a look at those. One of the things I think you're going to find is that what we're trying to accomplish is minimizing confusion and that. And hopefully one of those things that will minimize confusion is the zoning map. We're going from about 26 zoning designations down to about 13. Again, when we're talking about trying to accomplish minimizing confusion, streamlining, things of that nature, that means that we have a document that's organized a little bit more with the 21st century rather than 1958 and how things are worded. So the terminology has changed, formatting has changed. If you've had an opportunity to kind of take a look at that document, you should see a lot more graphs and charts, tables, things of that nature, rather than just paragraphs of text if you would look at our zoning code that we have today. Again, it's condensing rules, it's condensing our zoning districts. When we do have a use table now on our proposed zoning code. If you had a chance to take a look at that, that's a little bit of a change over our current code. One of the frequent calls we kind of get, you get kind of 2 different kind of calls. What can I do on my property? Or I'm interested in doing this business in your city, where can I go? One of the things that having a use chart now will help us is if somebody says, I have a restaurant. What zoning classifications does a restaurant, could I put a restaurant in? The zoning code's now written in a way it's going to be easier for folks to find that information. So hopefully that's one of the results of the zoning code rewrite. And so uses, we talked about, or I just talked about a use table. Uses are changing a little bit within Gahanna, at least proposed. It's not radical changes. By radical, meaning that we're not proposing to introduce multifamily or commercial in established residential neighborhoods. You're not going to see that. And I think Gahanna, about 60% of the actual land use is single family. Those established communities, neighborhoods, they're not going to change, at least from a zoning standpoint. Again, if it's residential today, we're not really planning to change that. What I think you'll find from a zoning map and a use standpoint is besides the consolidation of zoning categories, as we talked a little bit earlier tonight about maybe the differences between neighborhood commercial and a community commercial, or what we're going to call, or what we're proposing to call, general commercial. So staff really took a look at our zoning code and uses, and what, in our opinion, we found is that there was a lot of similarity in uses between our existing zoning districts, meaning that if it was allowed in one, it was probably going to be allowed in a whole bunch of them. And one of the challenges that I thought that we found, and some of the feedback we've had from the community, is that perhaps neighborhood commercial uses should be more of a daytime operating uses, less nighttime or those 24/7 hours of operation, like we talked about a gas station or a bar. Those are allowed by right or by conditional use now in neighborhood commercial, and those are being elevated to more intense use categories like the general commercial or the innovation and manufacturing. Again, it's not, we're not proposing to introduce a lot of new uses anywhere. It's really fine tuning, and that's a lot of that community engagement that we heard. Feedback from the community was that, generally speaking, everyone seemed to be relatively on the same page, but there were some tweaks to be a little bit, again, as the community involves, being representative of that vision of what we see for areas. So I think one of the things we tried to do was, when we were looking at our commercial areas, is being a little bit more mindful of those established neighborhoods. And I think one of those changes you'll find is that a lot of the zonings, when they're adjacent to neighborhoods, those are almost all neighborhood commercial now, instead of, it was more of a hodgepodge before, and some of them allowed a lot of intense uses. So more neighborhood commercial zonings adjacent to residential subdivisions, general commercial, the little bit more intense commercial category you'll find on the major roadways or at major intersections for the most part. Our industrial area still staying industrial with an innovation manufacturing designation. One of the major changes as well is regarding design and architecture. That's something when I came to the city pretty much straight away, heard feedback from the community. It started with Go Forward Gahanna, which I think was 2016, identifying the need to have more than what we have. Now, that's been debated by a lot of folks, what exactly that looks like. We had some public engagement. We talk about those things. We also explicitly asked those questions as part of our online engagement with the land use plan and with the zoning code. So we're trying to take that feedback, take the recommendations of the land use plan. And so what I think you'll find from a proposed change is moving away from language such as quality materials and harmonious color palettes to moving to something a little bit more specific. What does that mean? So one of the things that we proposed is we have, based off of the design review area, what zoning you're in, what kind of use you are, there's certain materials that are allowed, and there's certain materials that are prohibited. So we actually have encouraged and then prohibited materials, limitation on the number of colors that can be on a facade of the building. I believe the code says 4. Again, that's kind of a common design element you'll see in codes when they don't have specific architectural standards. You'll see materials, limitation on colors. Sometimes we also have language in there about, it was just brought up on a classroom application about windows and transparency. There's some language in the design section about having certain levels of transparency on buildings. Again, this is just high level, some things maybe to be mindful of as you go through the code. One of the things that was talked about quite a bit on and off is process, and how would zoning code change process. I know that's one of the things we talk about a lot. We've made a lot of code changes throughout the years to kind of refine some of our low-hanging fruit regarding process. The zoning code really isn't radically changing process much. I would say the two that stick out to me is right now, plats require a pre-application. It's their only application that requires a pre-application. They submit, then they turn around and submit the exact same thing. It's the exact same requirement. So we looked at that. We've talked to external and internal customers about that process. It doesn't seem to have a lot of value, so we're proposing to eliminate our one pre-application and just have the plat. So the plat would still come before Planning Commission, City Council. It's just eliminating a pre-application. The major change to a process, and we've talked about this on and off for a few years, is making some things administrative. And I think it was a few months ago, we did a little bit more of a deep dive, and I was talking to you about final development plans and, you know, what maybe we could live with being administrative. Well, one of the things we're proposing is, in the word final, the words final development plan has caused some confusion. So changing that a little bit to just development plan and combining the design review application with the development plan, because those are essentially the same materials, the same review, internal reviewers, planning commission. There wasn't a lot of value with separating those out. So again, the final development plan, as we've historically known it, has changed some to a development plan with really an administrative review and a planning commission review. We've talked about previously what are some of those elements that maybe planning commission would be less concerned about and could be an administrative approval. We've tried to codify that and put that into writing, so I would encourage you all to take a look at that. And again, if we zigged and we need to zag, we can certainly do that. I think that's something that we're hoping if we do need to change course, that at our next Planning Commission meeting, which is December 20th, that would really be a Q&A and an opportunity for us to have that feedback and, you know, like I said, change course if necessary. Those are some of the high level, some of those changes. One thing I'd like to share is you know, what does zoning not do? Because there's a lot of misconceptions about zoning and what it does and doesn't do. So zoning isn't about liking or not liking something. It's about code standards. It's, you know, do you meet this or not? And with that, because it's not a like or not like, you know, we cannot stop an applicant or potential developer from submitting any type of application. They have the right, obviously, to come forward and come before Planning Commission. So whether the zoning code gets rewritten or not, I mean, that's not going to change property rights in that. So I just want to make sure, I know Planning Commission's well aware, but just putting it out there again, emphasizing the fact that revising the zoning code, you know, can't stop folks from, you know, developing their property and making requests. There are a couple of things that I think staff needs a little bit of direction on, and we have time that we could, you know, amend something and get it back before you before December 20th or a future meeting. And two things I would like to bring up specifically. One is electronic signs. In our current code, and for those of you who weren't maybe on Planning Commission, it used to be that our code did not allow for electronic signs at all. We had a request. There was some back and forth. It went to BZBA, Planning Commission. Ultimately, it got approved. And so what we try to do is say, okay, if generally speaking, everyone can kind of live with this sign, let's turn that into code, make that our new standard. So it's very limiting. It's the Peace Lutheran sign out there, which is pretty much static. I think the code says it can change once per day, and the colors are really just that amber color, and it limits the amount of sign that can be electronic. If we're okay with that, that's our minimum, they meet code. I guess staff's question is, should that still be an application and process that goes before Planning Commission, or is that a administrative process? Again, it's a sign, it's meeting sign code, because originally it was a Planning Commission request. We don't need an answer now, but it was just something to think about. We could move that to an administrative. Again, generally speaking, if things meet code, that's generally speaking more of an administrative process than a public hearing process. The other is temporary signs. We talk a lot about, from time to time, temporary signs. We didn't talk about it much during our workshop. I think we talked about it maybe just a smidge in that, and it's a tough nut to crack. And we meaning staff would like a little bit more direction, because from time to time, temporary signs don't come before planning commission. So that means if it's getting brought up, it's somebody's seen something, a lot of signs get out there, or they're out there for a long time. I know this was brought up recently, and Mr. Roth brought up the fact that probably the only way to regulate that is just to prohibit it. Otherwise, it's a nightmare. You'll never be able to regulate those signs. But you got to balance out all those needs and wants of the community, the residential and the commercial business community. It seems like, though, it's been fairly consistent over the last several years that maybe we're a little too permissive with signs, whether it's the number or the duration or the length of time. Well, I guess that's duration, sorry. I didn't have dinner, so forgive me if I repeat myself. So if there's something, like if there's a different direction we want to go, I mean, we could always change things, but obviously now is probably the best time to do that and that. So again, if there's any feedback on those two topics, we would love to have it. But again, really our next meeting is more for Q&A, and I would love if you have any questions, if you've had a chance to take a look at it, we'd be more than happy to try to, tackle any questions and that. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Mr. Blackford, Ms. Hicks, any questions?
Just a couple points of feedback. I have had a chance to look at it and still digesting it. But it's, first impressions are favorable. It's clean, easy to navigate, right around 200 pages. So it's a light read.
Yeah.
Mr. Blackford brought up the use table, which came into play tonight. Is very helpful to look and see automotive uses and where it's allowed. There's also an approval table further on in the document where there was a question that was brought up. Well, who is the decision maker for rezoning? The approval table will tell you that. You mentioned some of the discussions that have now gone into writing about administrative approvals. I like the de minimis variances. That's a nice section to have, and minor development plans. So again, it's nice to see that being addressed, that if it's minimal or de minimis, does it need to come before planning commission? No, I agree. For my fellow members, the approval criteria is changing. So how do we approve or not approve? It's going to be defined differently. So yeah, it's again, still digesting it, but like what I see.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that feedback. And there's a lot there, and it's I don't know how many dozens of times I look at it. I always find something new. So it's one of those, we got to get it. There's always going to be, no code's going to be perfect. We're not striving for perfection, but we are always trying to get better. So, knock on wood, everything goes well. This zoning code rewrite gets adopted first quarter of 2024, let's say. We anticipate being back in front of you in 2024, because once you get a code in place, then you start having applications and requests. We're trying to run through as many scenarios as possible, but it's impossible to think of everything. So we plan on being back in front of you again, continually just trying to make it better. So we're always looking to that. So thank you for the feedback. Appreciate it.
Mr. Weston? Mr. Weston, any comment? No? Mr. Greenberg?
Well, I went through all 200 pages, and it's a great document. It really is. The drawings really help in each section. That's really a great addition. I wish I would have had this document when I was going through graduate school and 40 years ago. It'd be great help. But
4 years ago, sir.
Yeah, right. So I do have a couple of questions. One was with prohibited items. And the one that I'm real familiar with was, looks like Q under that section, which is all classes of landfills, including but not limited to reduction facilities and solid waste facilities and yard waste facilities. Well, I don't know if the word classes is the right word, because landfills aren't classified as far as I remember. They're just named. It's municipal solid waste landfill, there's industrial landfills, but there are classes for yard waste facilities. There are 4 classes of those. So kind of mixes the nomenclature, and you need to look at the regulations to get that right.
We can certainly do that. I believe that section of code was just a copy and paste of our prohibited use section. But yes, we'll absolutely take a look at that terminology and update it.
Yeah, and then we have a closed landfill here in Gahanna. And that should be included with some kind of discussion, because they have a lot of requirements that they have to do to maintain that facility for 30 years after it closes. Now, we may have already gone past that, but.
Yeah, I think there's two closed landfills in Gahanna, right?
And then the last thing that I'll just make a quick comment about is the fines. So it looks like if you do something wrong and you violate the zoning code or the approvals, it's $1,000. Correct?
I'll take your word. I don't.
Take my
I don't-
word for it.
yes,
I just
yes.
read it, so yeah. So it's $1,000. But is that is that per violation, per day?
That's on our list of things to amend.
Yeah,
And,
because
that.
that's pretty
But
minimal.
that's not up to zoning code anyways, so that's ends up being a legal thing. So the way it's written now, it says, I believe, like a minor misdemeanor, and it can be fined daily, but that not up to our pay level, what happens with that. But yeah, we do need to tweak that. And just so you know, I believe what we're trying to do is, what we talked about last time was just having one penalty section, like the way it's written in our current code.
Right.
It's all over the place. We really just need it one time, and we just talked about it recently. So that needs amended, and the clerk of court had previously provided language on what they wanted for the fine. So we'll have a little discussion on that, make sure that's still appropriate, but a dollar amount won't be there.
Okay. And then the other thing that Mr. Hicks commented, the charts were great. I mean, I really think that's a great addition, and really helps somebody going through and looking at this document. And the table and the glossary, that's good
Well,
stuff.
Thank you for that, because that's part of it is when you live and breathe it, sometimes you don't always understand what somebody who doesn't, and so we're trying to put on multiple hats, and that's what we're hoping some of the feedback would be, so we're very appreciative of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Serrano?
Just echo some of the comments. I think the thing that's really helpful about the document is it's just more robust, gives you visual examples and ways to kind of have dialogue and move back and forth. Mr. Blackford, you said it just around, as soon as you get something in place and then you get 4 applications that you're like, oh, well, I guess it meets the letter of the code, but now what? So I think it is going to be, as we transition to this, something that we just we're working on, right? I did want to say too, I pulled up, as Mr. Greenberg was talking, the Creekside Mixed Use District, just in light of some of the stuff that we heard tonight from Sheets. And I really want to stress, I think this is, that area is a real opportunity within the city for betterment, improvement. And I don't know, I've only lived in Gahanna for, it's probably, well, it's at least 15, 16 years. My wife has been here all her life. And I don't know how it was zoned, that gave us what we see currently on that strip of Granville between Creekside and the high school. But, I think we know better today. And so I think that maximizing that potential in that strip, I think is something that the city should focus on, because it has such it's our front door, it's our front, so to speak, and I think it's has the opportunity to detract or attract people and businesses, so.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Mr. Black?
I don't think I want to get into a whole sign discussion tonight, but I think I'll just preface it by saying, signs are very personal to businesses. And even residential, people put signs up when they're remodeling, people put signs up at elections, people put signs up for civic functions. I think it's going to be difficult to codify, and it's going to be difficult to enforce. So it's something that, we really should have we could have a whole document just on signage.
Absolutely. And that's always something, again, I don't think, if it's just carry forward what we have today, we could always revisit it, at some other time and do a deeper dive and try to figure out what direction to go. Yes, sir.
I brought this up before. I'll bring it up again, just it's a good story. When I owned Rotelli's, I had a banner facing Cherry Bottom on the fence that advertised my pizza night. And it was there for about 6 years before someone came by and said, that's against code. You got to take it down. So, different administration.
Wouldn't be so sure about that.
Good?
Good.
All right. So zoning, and we were hit with it tonight. Somebody's got a 30-year lease coming before us in an area.
And if I can interrupt, I'll disagree with that. Ground leases are usually much longer than 30 years, which is what they would have there.
I mean, the owner of that property just invested a lot of money in remodeling a portion of it. And now he's completely redeveloping it. And to my surprise, what's the city's point of view, or how do you guys handle educating our new scope of what we want? Because I agree with Mr. Soriano, that is my parade route. That should be a staple of what Gahanna can be. But here I have a land owner coming before us saying, hey, I'm gonna put a gas station here. So is there any kind of proactive thing that the city is doing to kind of educate what we're trying to do so that he wouldn't make that decision up front? So we're not presented with it, because the landowner would say, we're kind of changing it. So is there any mailings or anything that's going out outside of, because he's not looking at anything until his lease is up. I mean, he's just, the landowner.
Well, I don't believe the landowner was here tonight.
Correct.
I don't know what the landowner's involvement
Well,
is
he's
in that
permitting
project.
this,
I can
yeah.
say that with Sheets, they came to us with that property. So again, it's kind of two different approaches. Sometimes folks will come to you and say, where might this be appropriate? Other folks will say, hey, most of the time they just submit an application and we don't know. This time Sheets reached out, already identified this
Right.
property. Whether the code changes or not, it's not a use that planning staff would say is appropriate in that location. So whether the zoning code changes or not, staff is still going to have the same concerns with the request because of the land use plan and what the vision is for the Granville Street corridor, which we just talked about. I would say between land use plan, which identified the focus area there and moving away from auto-oriented uses, and with zoning code, there's been at least 15 to 20 some way of at least minimum, public engagement opportunities, whether in person or, online engagement. So I don't think, I've never heard of a community sending out notices to all their residents about a zoning code change or similar types
Right.
of updates. I'm not sure how that would get
Yeah, so
done.
So my question is, how would you approach, or how would we educate identified area of, hey, we're looking at this is the city, this is the direction we might want to go? Because, they presented to you, hey, where could we put this? I don't know how you identified that. I don't know if Buckles came up or something, but since that came up, the landlord or the owner of the land had to go, well, hey, I got a business here now I'm going to get this deal, but it doesn't fit with what we wanted in the future, so he should have killed it right off the bat. Like, no, we don't want that. I'm looking to develop the whole thing. But
I've never encountered development that operates in that way. Typically, it's understand that there might be different rules that don't align with what I want to do, and I'm going to move
So
forward.
the city doesn't have a policy of kind of putting out notifications or something?
Oh, I wouldn't say that, because I think it sounds, probably a better example might be like the Creekside District Master Plan, when we're looking at a specific area and analyzing that for potential, changes, and that's more of a concentrated area rather than the city at large. And there's always various stakeholder and steering committees involved with those plans, and that I think I don't think the land use plan had a steering committee. The Creekside District Master Plan had various, engagements with property owners, business owners in that area to solicit their feedback. We had public engagement with the zoning code, in the Creekside area, and that specifically hoping to get the attention and the, folks who visit that area for their feedback. We had targeted engagement opportunities for business owners and more of like realtors, and that we had it multiple times, and we did all sorts of notification by all sorts. I don't know all the various ones, but it's not typically direct mailouts. It's more of websites and social media posts and things of that nature.
So to follow up with the zoning code discussion, I did look at it. It does look nice. I do echo that the 200 pages, I'm used to looking at 200-page documents from the city, so that was not a big deal, but it did look good.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Any other comments?
I'll make a comment real quick on how I envision that land deal went down for the Sheets. I think whoever owns the land, I have no idea who it is, looks at one thing, which is dollars. They're not looking at the city's priorities, and they're looking at what's best for them economically, whether it's an individual or whether it's a company. It probably happened one of two ways. Either there's a sale agreement to sell the land to Sheets, similar to what we saw at the roundabout, or there's a ground lease where the owner is going to lease the ground to Sheets. Sheets is going to build the building. I disagree with what was said in the chambers here. Ground leases are hugely long, could be 100 years, with language that says, if you no longer use this, I get the ground back for free. So the ground comes back to me if you abandon your business here and no longer do it. If Sheets wants to, redevelop it from a gas station to a convenience store, if everyone goes electric, that language would be in there. But it's going to be one of those two things. It's either just an outright sale, Sheets is going to buy the land, or it's a ground lease where Sheets is going to lease the ground and build the building, which is very typical for gas stations, McDonald's, even things like Walmart. If you go down Morse Road where the Walmart and the Sam's Club is, Casto owns that center. Walmart owns their own building, but has a ground lease from Casto for the land. But it's longer than 30 years, because 30 years from now, Walmart's not going to want to be thrown out of there. They're going to want to, it's hugely long ground leases with language, so.
Getting back to the zoning code discussion real quick, I think it would be kind of remiss if I didn't say thank you for the cleanup that you did of the document, and it looks great. And as you can imagine, in my vocational life, I've seen some pretty terrible zoning codes, and this is definitely a step in the right direction. So from one planner to others, just want to say thank you for that. And one specific thing that I did, I haven't got through all the document, one specific thing I did see was the inclusion of ADUs, and that I think is going to be a big deal going forward. I know, again, in my vocational life, we spent 6 months of just writing, we were told, go write an ADU code. It's like, okay. So I definitely appreciate that specific item, because again, I with the housing situation right now, it's not going to be a silver bullet, but it's a step in the right direction.
Exactly, and that was the thought process, exactly, was to try to, in our own small way, without really disrupting the existing character of a neighborhood, and that's why we had some of those safeguards in there, but trying to tackle it without, again, changing the character. So hopefully we did that. If we didn't, we can always adjust. Thank you.
It's fluid. But again, thank you for the efforts, and again, just kind of as an aside, I've shared it with some of my colleagues in my work life, and they're just like, wow, this is great, so good job.
Thank you. Very kind of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Blackford.
Thank you.
Moving on to official reports. Mr. Roth, anything from the Assistant City Attorney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have something out of the norm for me. I am, I guess, notifying all of you. I am going to be here in the future. The city attorney-elect has asked me to stay on as assistant city attorney, so I don't think she'll be making changes as to who attends these meetings, so I think I'm going to be your legal counsel going forward.
Very good.
Very good.
Thank you. We're happy to hear that. Director of Planning.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I know our next meeting, I think at this point, we have one application, and it was brought up by a couple of folks, de minimis. You'll find an application in front of you where hopefully now it'll make sense why we have that language in there, because I believe they're 5 inches over the setback. And I do want to give them a shout out for being honest and truthful, even at their own detriment, because a lot of folks might have just fudged that setback and, really no one would ever know. But so it's good to have that language in there, and then I think we'll see an application why maybe that's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Council liaison.
It's budget season, and we Monday night had a nice long budget discussion. Things are moving well on that front. I believe the goal is to have a vote December 18th. That is the main item on the last few agenda items with council. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, since you're in the House, state your name and address.
Laurie Jadwin, Mayor of the City of Gahanna, 200 South Hamilton Road, because I'm here most of the time. Actually, first of all, I want to thank the members of the commission for your comments tonight, to Director Blackford, as well as to Logan and to Maddie. This zoning code that you have an initial draft of this evening has been about 2 years. Three. Michael said it 3. It is 3. But it's 3 years worth of work that's finally culminating. And I know we had a joint workshop with all of you and council, so thank you for your time and your input on that. I know there will be continued discussions on the zoning code as we move forward, but this is a significant step forward for the city. Clearly, we have projects like we do tonight, having a better defined code that reflects the future vision as determined by the community is going to be paramount for how we move forward successfully. Wanted to let you know, you may have all received an invitation already, but I want to reiterate. Next Tuesday, December 12th, we will be having an open house in these chambers from 4:30 to 6 p.m. to honor and celebrate our City Councilwoman, Karen Angelou, who will be retiring after 34 years of dedicated service to the residents of the City of Gahanna. So she has just really left an indelible mark on this community, has been a tireless advocate for this city, and while we hate to see her go, it will be our pleasure to honor and celebrate her for all that she's done for our community. I know some of you, I believe, I think Mr. Wester has already RSVP'd, he'll be attending. So we hope you can make it, stop by. We'll have some refreshments, a brief presentation for her, but we look forward to seeing you next week, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no comments. Is there any correspondence and actions?
No, sir.
Members, any kind of comments or final say? No?
Real quick, I will be absent. I will be absent at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Barkin, for letting us know. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.